The Draugr Plague, Funeral Without Fire. Season 1, Episode 3. The storm hit before the village reached the shore. It came down from the ridge behind them and across the fjord in front of them, closing like jaws. Hard snow struck the dead warden stones at their backs. Wind drove loose ice into faces, eyes, and open mouths. The returned coins lay cold in the bowl behind Astrid, no brighter for being given back. The stones gave no blue thread, no answer, no boundary. Then the first pitch bundle tore loose from the shore rack. The sound cut through the wind, rope snapping, wood cracking, men shouting too late. The bundle rolled from the high stack, struck the frozen ground, and burst open. Black pitch kegs scattered across the snow like broken teeth. A second lashing whipped free and lashed a boy across the cheek before his father dragged him down. Ulfric was already running. "To the shore," he shouted. "Leave the ridge. Move." The village stumbled after him. Some still looked back at the dead stones. Some looked at the cold bowl of returned coins. Leif looked at both and felt the shape of the moment. The village had gone to the stones asking whether surrender mattered. The answer had been one breath of light and then darkness. Now the storm had chosen the thing they needed next. Fuel. Pitch for boats. Driftwood for heat. Dry scraps for pyres. Rope for frames. Resin for seams. The small stores that made tomorrow possible were laid along the shore because the shore had always been practical. Wind came from the fjord, yes, but the racks were high, the sheds close, and the boat frames needed supplies near hand. Practical things failed first when the world turned hostile. Freya reached the shore just behind Ulfric. A long plank had torn loose from a boat frame and swung from one nail, hammering against the ribs of the unfinished hull. Two men tried to grab it. The wind slammed it back, knocking one into a rack of driftwood. The rack tilted. Poles slid. A whole stack of grey wood shifted toward the ice. Freya threw herself against it. "Hold this!" she shouted. No one heard at first. The storm ate her voice. She shoved her shoulder under the collapsing side and screamed again. This time 3 women ran to her, then a boy, then an old man with one bad leg. Together they caught the rack before it fell completely. Driftwood spilled around their feet, but the whole store did not go. Across the yard, pitch cakes slid toward a dark crack in the shore ice. A child lunged for one. Ulfric caught the child by the back of the cloak and flung him toward his mother. Not pitch, children first. The mother shouted something at him, gratitude or anger, Leif could not tell. Astrid came down last, carrying the bowl of returned coins. She had wrapped it in cloth, but the cloth did not hide the cold weight inside. She set it under the lee of a boat frame where the wind could not tip it. The coins lay still. No heat, no glow, no mercy. Leif saw her look from the bowl to the pitch. The shore had always been the village's second heart. Fish came through it. Boats left from it. Driftwood was stacked there because every child learned to sort wet from dry before learning letters. Pitch was kept there because seams and torches both needed it. Now all those ordinary facts turned into one danger. A broken rack was not just wood falling. It was pyres lost, boat seams opened, hearths thinned, and old laws made impossible. A pitch cake broke under Ulfric's boot as he crossed the shore. Black resin smeared over the snow. In summer, that same smell meant boats sealed tight and nets going out. Now it smelled like a choice being destroyed before anyone could make it. He wanted to order every hand to save pitch first. Then he saw the torn body covering. Then he saw the boat frame twist again. A chieftain's command needed one world. This storm had made 3 worlds collide. Freya's shoulder burned under the weight of the rack. She heard wood sliding behind her, heard women cursing as they shoved poles back into place, heard a child asking if the dead were getting wet. That question nearly broke her grip. The dead were not supposed to be another store to secure, another bundle to cover, another task waiting behind boats and pitch. The dead were supposed to be given fire before the living argued over what remained. The first people down from the ridge moved like those leaving a funeral before the grave was filled. They kept glancing over their shoulders at the dead stones, as if the old blue might return if enough eyes begged for it. It did not. The ridge only gave back snow, black sky, and the bowl Astrid carried with both hands. The returned coins made no sound in the cloth, yet Leif felt them in every shout below. They were the proof that giving something back did not always repair what taking had broken. "Is this the same pressure?" he asked. Astrid's eyes stayed on the storm. "Do not give weather a throne, but do not call it innocent because it has no face." That was all she would say. Ulfric had to choose what to save while everyone watched him choose. The largest pitch store had split open. The small, dry kindling shed had lost one wall. The boat frames were taking damage with every gust. A pile of plank offcuts meant for repairs had begun to slide across the ice toward the dark water. Near the smoke hut, a covered sledge held 2 bodies waiting for proper rites. One of the lashings had come loose there too, and the sailcloth over the bodies snapped like a living thing. Freya saw the cloth lift. She left the driftwood rack and ran for the sledge. "Freya!" Ulfric shouted. "The boat frame! The dead are uncovered! The living need boats!" She stopped with the storm pushing at her back and looked at him across the yard. The argument that would tear the day open was already there between them, but there was no time to speak it. The sailcloth tore loose. One dead arm fell from under it, grey and stiff, fingers curled as if reaching for the air. Several villagers cried out. Freya ran to cover the bodies. Ulfric turned away from her and ordered men to the boat frames. Leif wrote under his cloak, shielding the wax from ice with his own body. Storm struck fuel before morning. Pitch lost. Driftwood damaged. Boat frame broken. Dead uncovered. Ulfric chose boats first. Freya chose bodies. He hesitated, then added the part that shamed them all. Leif tried to count losses the way Ulfric wanted, but some losses would not become numbers. How many nights of warmth lived in one pitch cake? How many steps across ice did one boat rib mean? How much fear entered a child when she saw adults choose wood over bodies? He wrote what could be written, and felt the unwritten part grow heavier behind each line. The storm also changed how people looked at Ulfric. During the raid, men had watched his hand for attack. During the first rising, they had watched his spear. Now they watched his eyes move from wood to pitch to bodies and understood that leadership could be a kind of public bleeding. Every order saved something visible and abandoned, something else in front of witnesses. The old chieftains in songs chose between glory and death. Ulfric chose between wet kindling and a corpse's mouth. Leif knew no meter for that. Stones dead behind us, returned coins cold. The storm took a third lashing. A rack of driftwood spilled across the shore, and half the wood slid into the dark water under the ice. No one had strength left to pretend it was only weather. By the time the worst gust passed, the shore looked raided. No enemy had crossed it. No axe had struck it. Still, the damage lay everywhere. Pitch cakes were cracked, wet, or lost under broken ice. Driftwood had scattered beyond reach. One boat frame sagged with 2 ribs split. Rope snarled under snow. The dry kindling shed stood open to the wind with its roof bent back like a broken shield. Ulfric made them count while hands were still shaking. He did not trust grief counts anymore. Not after gold, not after missing coins, not after a child had returned one small piece and watched a stone die. So he pointed and made Leaf write. Pitch. Less than half dry, Leaf said after the men reported. Maybe less if the cracked cakes spoil. Driftwood. One full rack lost, another damaged. Shore pieces scattered, some recoverable at low wind. Boat frame. One damaged, repair possible if ribs are spared. Kindling. Wet. Some buried. Some gone. Freya stood beside the covered bodies and listened to every word like it was a sentence passed over the dead. There were 3 bodies on sledges now. Arnie under sailcloth after the fish store. An old woman who had died before dawn from smoke and cold. A boy's uncle, found stiff beside the lower fence where he had stood watch too long. They were not walking. They were not clawing. Not yet. That was the cruel word in everyone's mind. Yet. The village gathered in a tight half-circle between shore and longhouse. They faced the stores, the bodies, and the dead ridge above. The warden stones could not be seen clearly through blowing snow, but everyone knew where they stood. Their darkness seemed to press down the slope. A man said what others feared. "We cannot burn all 3. Freya turned on him. "We cannot leave them unburned." "With what?" he asked. He held up both hands. His fingers were black with pitch and shaking from cold. "My roof plank? Your spear shaft? The boat ribs? If the dead rise because we kept ribs for boats, what boats will we have left?" Ulfric stepped between them before the answer became a fight. He looked older than he had at sunset. The storm had put ice in his beard. Smoke from the damaged pitch had darkened one side of his face. His eyes moved over the stores and did not soften. "Full pyres are forbidden," he said. The words landed badly because everyone knew they were coming. Freya stared at him. "No." Ulfric did not ask Astrid whether the storm had a will. He knew better than to ask a question that would give frightened people too much shape for fear. But he watched her face while the reports came in. When she looked at the dead stones, he felt one kind of dread. When she looked at the wet pitch, he felt another. The first belonged to old powers. The second belonged to arithmetic, and arithmetic had become crueler than prophecy. The count became a second storm. Each number struck a different house. Less pitch meant fewer sealed boats and fewer hot flames. Less driftwood meant smaller hearths and thinner soup. Broken ribs meant slower escape if the bay opened or if the dead forced them out. Wet kindling meant morning would begin with smoke and coughing. No one could hear the count as only village stores. Every person translated it into the room where his own family slept. Even silence began to choose sides. Those with children looked toward the hearth stores. Those with kin under cloth looked toward Freya. Those who had worked boats all their lives looked at the damaged frame as if it were a wounded animal. No one said coward. No one said faithless. The words moved through the crowd anyway, searching for mouths brave or cruel enough to give them shape. The bodies under sailcloth seemed to listen to the argument. Freya heard the stored wood spoken of as numbers and thought of hands. Hands had dragged it from shore ice. Hands had split it. Hands had stacked it for winter before anyone knew winter would ask for the dead. A village did not lose fuel in the abstract. It lost hours of labor, promises of warmth, and the right to grieve without measuring flame. Ulfric knew some would later say he had chosen boats over souls. Perhaps they would be right. But a boat was not just wood to him. A boat was the last argument against being trapped between dead stones, a sealed hoard, and a fjord that might become a road or a wall depending on weather. If they burned the ribs now, they might honor 3 dead and condemn 40 living. If they saved the ribs, the 3 dead might come ask why. Ulfric did not look away. We have less than half the dry pitch. We have one damaged boat frame. We have driftwood in the water and winter closing the bay. If we burn what remains, we stay here and starve beside clean ashes. Clean ashes are safer than hungry corpses. Hungry living need a road out. Astrid stood near the bowl of returned coins. She had not warmed them. She had not hidden them. Their cold presence made every practical argument feel haunted. "Fire answers some things," she said. "It does not answer hunger. It does not mend boats. It does not make a broken oath whole." Freya looked at her sharply. "Are you helping him?" "I am naming the trap." Ulfric seized on the part he could use. "Then name this too. Stone can hold until morning if we stack deep and watch." Astrid's face changed. "Not much. Enough." "Stone can hold weight," she said. "It cannot become right because law needs it to." The village heard the warning. Ulfric heard it too. He stepped past it anyway because every path now had a body lying across it. "Bodies go under stone," he said. "No full pyres. No more pitch spent unless the dead move. We save fuel for boats, hearths, and watch fires." A woman asked, "What if one is my blood?" Ulfric's voice lowered. "Then you stand watch with the rest of us." That answer was not enough. It was the only answer he could afford. Freya moved close to him. Quiet made her more dangerous than shouting. "You are making grief obey a store count. I am making grief survive winter. You are teaching the dead we can be bargained down." Ulfric flinched as if she had struck him. Then his face hardened. "I am teaching the living that one law must hold when every custom asks for fuel we do not have." Leif wrote the decree with numb fingers. Full pyres forbidden. Bodies under stone. Fuel saved for boats, hearths, watch. Fire only if the dead move. He hated the last line. It was practical, clear, and monstrous. It made the dead prove need before receiving right. It made the living wait for horror before spending warmth. Freya heard the word forbidden and thought of all the things that word had failed to stop. Hidden coins. Men reaching for scattered silver. A dead man gathering gold with black fingers. A forbidden pyre would at least burn. A forbidden grief only hid until it found another door. The bodies under sailcloth seemed to listen to the argument. That was foolish, Leif knew, but everyone felt it. When Freya said fire, the cloth moved in the wind and people stepped back. When Ulfric said boats, a loose plank struck the frame below and sounded like an answer. The village had begun to hear judgment in every ordinary noise. That was another loss from the dead stones. Without their blue line, no sound stayed, only itself. The storm eased for a moment. In that pause, everyone heard the burial shed. Hakon scraped once inside. No one spoke after that. They carried the bodies to the burial ground before night because no one wanted to do it in darkness. The burial ground lay beyond the lower fence, past the path where children had once been sent to gather twigs and old women had once sat in mild weather to speak names. Snow covered the cairns now. Some mounds were older than memory. Some were fresh enough that the stones still sat unevenly. The place had always been sad. Today it felt unfinished. Ulfric ordered 6 men to carry each sledge. Freya walked beside Arni's body with a torch she had no permission to use. It was not a pyre torch. Not yet. It was a watch flame, thin and bending, fed by a rag too small for the work she wanted from it. Astrid brought ash from the dead warden's stones and marked the first cairnstone. She did not chant. She did not promise safety. She pressed ash into the cracks and looked at Ulfric. "Say what this is," she told him. Ulfric's jaw tightened. a holding until fire can be spared. Say it louder. He looked at the villagers gathered behind the sledges. Some hugged themselves against cold. Some held tools. Some held nothing because empty hands looked less guilty after the dimming of the warden stones. Leif stood where he could see all three bodies and the storm-dark sky. Ulfric raised his voice. These dead are held under stone until fire can be spared. This is not full rite. It is watch and necessity. A murmur went through the crowd. That honesty hurt more than a lie would have. A lie might have let someone sleep. Freya stepped forward. Necessity does not make it clean. No, Ulfric said. It makes it necessary. They placed the old woman first. Before the stones covered her, her daughter tried to smooth the dead hair back under the cloth. The wind kept undoing the gesture. At last the daughter gave up and pressed both palms over her own mouth, so the sound in her would not become a plea no one could answer. That was the shape of the day, every small tenderness interrupted by cold, law, or lack. Her daughter tried to put a carved comb beside her. Freya stopped the hand, then saw it was bone, not gold, and let it pass. The daughter sobbed harder because permission felt like pity. They placed the watchman second. His brother asked for a coal to be set near his mouth. Ulfric refused. The brother's face went empty. He set a stone instead, too hard, and cracked one of the cairn slabs. They placed Arni last. No one wanted to touch his sailcloth. Freya did it herself. She checked the bindings at wrist and ankle, then added another rope because she did not trust death to respect shame. Arni's severed head was wrapped apart from the body. That had been Astrid's order. She gave no reason beyond, do not let mouth and hands learn together again. Leif wrote it exactly and wished he had not understood enough to fear it. The cairn took shape slowly, stone by stone. Each stone was a choice not to burn. Each thud said later, later, later. The word became unbearable. Freya finally turned on Ulfric in front of everyone. The burial ground made even strong voices smaller. Men who had shouted by the shore spoke in low tones here. Women who had demanded fire kept their eyes on the stones instead of Ulfric. Everyone knew someone under these cairns. Everyone had once trusted weight, snow, and memory to keep the dead in place. Now each mound seemed like a closed door, and the village had learned what closed doors could fail to hold. The storm had left little ridges of ice against the older stones. They looked like white lips pressed shut. Leif noticed how many villagers avoided stepping on old graves, even while carrying new bodies toward them. Fear had not erased reverence. That made the refusal of fire hurt more, not less. The village still knew what respect was supposed to look like. It simply no longer had enough dry wood to perform it. Ulfric ordered 6 men to carry each sledge. Kari and Nujal should have been sent away before the last stones. No one did it. Adults assumed children disappeared when adult voices grew heavy. They did not. They became quiet. Kari watched the torch in Freya's hand, the way another child might watch a hero's sword. Njal watched the cairn mouth where Arni's wrapped head was set apart. Neither child understood policy, fuel, escape, or right. They understood that adults were frightened and that fire was the thing everyone kept naming. The old woman's cairn took the longest because her daughter kept touching each stone before it was placed. At first the men waited. Then Ulfric almost ordered them to hurry. Freya looked at him, and the order stayed behind his teeth. The daughter was not delaying out of defiance. She was trying to give weight the tenderness that fire would have given quickly. Every touched stone said mother. Every placed stone said not enough. "Give me one pyre," she said. 1. Burn Arnie. Burn the greed-bound first. Let the others wait if you must stain us, but burn the one we know was taken. Ulfric looked toward the shore, though the stores could not be seen from here. Everyone knew what he saw in his mind: broken pitch, wet kindling, boat ribs, winter water. No. He rose with gold in his teeth. And if I spend pitch on him, what do I tell the child whose roof fire dies? What do I tell the men patching the last boat? What do I tell the living when escape fails because I gave the dead their due and left the living trapped? Freya's eyes shone, but not with tears. You speak as if the dead and living are separate now. Astrid closed her eyes at that. Ulfric heard it too. The sentence struck the exact place he had refused to look. The dead were not separate. Hakon behind the shed door had proved that. Arnie had proved it. The dead mother and the dead brother and every unburned body could become a decision returning with hands. Still he refused. Stone, he said. Watch. No pyre. Freya stepped so close that only he and Leif could hear her next words. If this fails, I will not let you call it fate. Ulfric answered just as quietly. If I burn the boats, I will not let you call that mercy. The last stone went over Arnie's cairn. The torch in Freya's hand guttered. She covered it with her palm, burning herself to keep it alive. Kari watched from behind her mother's skirt. Njal stood beside her, silent and wide-eyed. They had heard enough to understand only the wrong parts. Astrid watched the children at the edge of the crowd when Ulfric refused the pyre. Kari's eyes were fixed on Freya's torch. Njal's were fixed on the covered dead. Astrid almost called them away. Then a woman asked whether her husband would rise, and the moment passed. Later, Astrid would remember that missed breath with more anger than any omen. By the time Arnie's cairn was covered, several villagers had begun to murmur private prayers under their breath. The prayers did not match. Some were old hearthwords. Some were sailors' bargains. Some were only names repeated until they frayed. Astrid let them speak. She corrected no one. Correctness had become a smaller virtue than fear. But when one man promised gold if his brother stayed down, Astrid turned so sharply that his voice died before the bargain finished. The dead need fire. The adults will not give it. Children remember simple things. Night came early because the storm left clouds over the village like a lid. Watch fires burned low. Ulfric had ordered them fed with scraps only. No one liked the size of the flames. A small fire made small courage. Men stood in pairs by the fish store, the burial shed, the shore racks, and the lower path. Women watched roofs, doors, and children. Freya walked the line between village and burial ground with the same torch she had carried all day, now shorter by half, and wrapped again with stolen cloth. Not stolen, she told herself, taken for watch. That did not make the cloth less gone. Leif sat near the longhouse door with his wax board on his knees. He had written the fuel count, the decree, the cairn placements, Freya's objection, Ulfric's refusal. He had not written what Kari and Njal had heard. No one had asked him to track children's misunderstandings. That was why they were dangerous. Adults recorded laws. Children carried meanings. Astrid sat beside him for a time without speaking. At last Leif asked, "Will stone hold?" She looked toward the burial ground. Stone holds what weight allows. It does not forgive what was denied. That is not an answer. It is the answer I have. A shout came from the lower path. Freya ran first. Ulfric came from the shore watch with spear in hand. Leif followed with a torch so low it barely showed his boots. Others came behind because fear had become communal labor. The shout had come from the newest cairn. Not Arnie's, Torvald's. He had been buried before the horde arrived, before Hakon rose, before the warden's stones died. Her fisherman, her brother, a man known for mending nets without being asked. His cairn sat near the edge of the burial ground where wind piled snow high against the stones. One side had shifted. A dark gap showed under the top slab. The watchman by the path held his axe in both hands. I heard stone move. Ulfric pushed past him. Stand back. The cairn moved again. One stone rolled down the side and struck the snow. Then another. A hand came through the gap. It was grey, swollen from cold, and missing 2 fingernails. It opened and closed on air. Freya said, "Fire." No one moved. The watchers did not run when Torvald moved. That was new courage, or new exhaustion. They formed a halfring because Freya shouted them into it, and because no one wanted to be remembered as the first to flee a neighbor's grave. Still, Leif saw feet shifting back. He saw shoulders turn before faces admitted fear. The living stayed, but every body prepared to run. The path to Torvald's cairn felt longer in the dark. By day it was only a short climb through old snow. By night, with watchfires behind them and dead stones above, it seemed to leave the village entirely. Leif's torch showed boots, hems, the backs of hands, then nothing. Every time the wind lowered the flame, the cairns seemed to step closer. He told himself stones did not move unless pushed. Then Torvald's cairn moved again. Freya's demand for fire came from the part of her that still believed action could be clean. See the dead move, burn the dead, protect the living. But Ulfric's refusal dragged the shore back into the burial ground. Wet pitch, broken ribs, children needing hearths, boats needing seams. He made the cairn and the shore occupy the same breath. Freya hated him for it because she could not prove him wrong quickly enough to save the night. Torvald had not been greedy in life. That mattered to the village and did not matter to the hand coming through the stones. He had mended nets. He had given fish to widows. He had laughed too loud in the smokehouse. None of that kept him down without fire. The sight broke one secret hope, that only the greedy would return. If Torvald could rise, then virtue was not a wall. Custom had been a wall, maybe. Fire had been a wall, perhaps. They had spent both. She turned. Fire! A man held up his little watch flame helplessly. It will not take him. Not like this. Not wet stone, not without pitch. Torvald's arm pushed farther out. The shoulder followed. The cairn lifted from within as if the earth itself were breathing him free. He did not speak. That made him worse than Arnie. No mine, no word, only the slow labor of a body denied the end it was owed. Ulfric drove his spear down through the opening. The point struck flesh. Torvald's hand closed around the shaft. The dead fingers tightened until the wood creaked. Axes, Ulfric shouted. Freya swung first. Her axe cut into the wrist. The hand did not release. The second axe struck the forearm. Bone cracked. Torvald's head pushed into view, mouth packed with frozen earth, eyes filmed white. The sight of his face made one of the men sob, because Torvald had once carried that man's daughter through floodwater. "Do not name him now," Astrid snapped. The man bit his own hand to stay silent. Leif understood. Names had weight. Names could call grief into reach. He wanted to write Torvald, and did not. Then he realized refusing the name was another kind of fear, and wrote, Torvald rose from cairn without fire. The dead man pulled against Ulfric's spear. Ulfric nearly fell forward. Freya caught the shaft with both hands, braced her boot against the cairn, and shoved down. Two more villagers drove stones onto Torvald's shoulder. The cairn became a fight between the living pressing down and the dead pressing up. At last, Astrid thrust a burning brand into the gap. It was not enough to burn him. It was enough to make the dead hand open. Ulfric tore his spear free. Freya kicked stones into the hole until the arm disappeared. Men piled more stones, then more, until the cairn stood too high and crooked, a panic mound rather than a grave. Torvald stopped moving. No one believed he was ended. Freya turned to Ulfric with ash blowing across her face. Now. Burn him now. Ulfric looked at the brand in Astrid's hand. It had already eaten half itself away. He looked toward the shore stores. He looked toward the longhouse, where children watched through cracks despite being told to stay inside. No full pyre, he said. Freya stared as if she had not heard. He opened the cairn, and we closed it. Ulfric's refusal did not sound strong to him by then. It sounded like a man holding a door shut with his back while another door opened behind him. Each command saved one part of the village and endangered another. That was what leadership had become, choosing which fear would be given language first. After Torvald stopped moving, no one wanted to be the first to step away. Leaving felt like trusting the stones again, and trust had been spent. Freya kept her axe ready. Ulfric kept his spear point toward the cairn. Astrid watched the gaps between rocks rather than the mound itself. Leif watched the people. That was how he saw Kari's face at the longhouse crack, pale and intent, before a woman pulled the hide flap closed. He thought she had been sent back to sleep. He was wrong. For how long? Ulfric did not answer. That answer traveled farther than any command. Kari heard the adults from under the longhouse bench. She was not supposed to be there. Niall was not supposed to be beside her. They had been told to sleep near the inner wall with the younger children, away from doors, away from windows, away from talk. But no child slept when the dead moved stones. No child slept when adults whispered fire as if it were both food and sin. Through the gap under the bench, Kari saw boots come and go. Freya's boots, black with grave dirt. Ulfric's, dragging more than before. Astrid's staff. Leif's thin shoes stopping near the hearth whenever he needed enough light to write. The words came down to the children in broken pieces. Torvald opened. No pyre, not enough pitch, fire only if it moves again. Watch until dawn. Jarl whispered, "My uncle is under stone." Kari put a finger to her lips the way she had seen adults do when secrets were dangerous. They said, "Fire stops them." They said, "No fire." That was the whole adult argument, made small enough for children to carry. Kari waited until the longhouse settled into exhausted silence. The storm still breathed outside, but softer now. Watchfires showed as red smears through cracks in the wall. Somewhere, Hakon scraped once in the burial shed. Kari did not know his name. She knew only that dead men made sounds when adults failed. She crawled from under the bench. Njal caught her sleeve. "Where?" "To bring fire." His eyes widened. "They said not to. They said the dead need it. They said children stay." Kari looked toward the hearth. A clay cup of banked coals sat near the side, covered with ash to keep them alive until morning. Beside it lay a strip of pitch cloth too small for a proper torch, too small for adults, enough for a child who did not understand cost. "Then you stay," she said. Njal did not. They moved like thieves because the village had taught them what thieves looked like. Kari took the clay cup in both hands. Njal took the pitch cloth. They slipped past sleeping bodies, past a woman coughing into her sleeve, past Leaf with his head bent over the wax board and his eyes closed from exhaustion. Kari paused beside him. She liked Leaf because he wrote things down and did not shout. For a moment she wanted to wake him. Then Hakon scraped again outside, and the sound decided for her. The door opened with a soft groan. Kari did not think of herself as disobedient. That was the danger. She thought of the old woman crying over the body, Freya burning her palm to keep a torch alive, Ulfric saying no with a face like split wood, and adults using words that ended with nothing done. Children did not understand stores and escape. They understood that if a thing needed fire, someone had to bring fire. Jarl followed because Kari made fear feel like cowardice. He did not want to be brave. He wanted to be under a blanket with someone older awake beside him. But he had heard the adults say his uncle might need fire. He had heard them refuse. If he let Kari go alone and the dead took her, that would be his secret to carry. Children did not yet know that shared fear could still become guilt. They only knew not to stand alone with it. Outside, the village looked smaller from a child's height. The fish store was a black wall. The burial shed made small scraping sounds that Kari tried not to hear. The watchfires were not brave circles. They were little red eyes looking the wrong way. Kari kept the coal alive under her cloak and felt its heat against her ribs. It was frightening to carry something adults needed and had forbidden. It was also the first time that night she felt useful. The longhouse did not stop them because every adult inside was guarding a different failure. One woman slept sitting up with a knife in her lap. One man stared at his hands as if counting what they had hidden and what they had failed to save. Leaf's head had dipped toward his board, stylus still in his fingers. Kari stepped over the edge of his cloak and waited for him to wake. He did not. Later, that would matter to him more than anyone knew. Cold struck them. They crossed the yard, bent low. A watchman stood near the fish store with his back turned, looking toward the shore. Another stood by the burial shed, listening to the scrape inside. Neither looked for children with fire because adults feared large dangers first. Kari sheltered the cup under her cloak. Jarl held the pitchcloth against his chest. A coal glowed red through the ash, no bigger than a beetle's eye. At the lower path, Jarl began to cry without sound. "We should go back. We are helping. Freya helps. She is tired." That was true enough to keep them walking. The burial ground waited under broken cloud. The aurora moved behind it, pale green, thin as breath under ice. The cairns looked like sleeping animals. Torvald's mound was easy to find because it was too high and crooked. Fresh stones sat black against the snow. The place where his arm had come through was buried, but not hidden. Kari could see the difference even in the dark. For a moment, neither child moved. The village sounds were behind them now, muffled by wind and distance. No adult voice followed. No hand caught Kari's cloak. That made the place feel even more wrong. Children were used to being stopped before danger became real. When no one stopped them, Kari mistook absence for permission. Jarl understood absence differently. He understood that they were alone. The little coal was fading. Kari could see grey ash growing over the red heart of it. Panic made her clumsy. She scraped too hard and nearly spilled the cup. Jarl caught the rim with both hands, and heat bit his fingers. He gasped, but did not let go. That small, shared pain made them braver for one breath. It felt like proof that they were doing something costly and therefore right. Enjal held out the pitchcloth. His hand shook. Kari set the clay cup down and dug into the ash with a twig. The coal brightened. She touched the pitchcloth to it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a thin flame climbed the black strip. Both children stared. It was beautiful because it was forbidden and useful. Behind them, at the edge of the burial ground, a stone clicked. Injal turned first. Kari. She lifted the little flame. I brought fire. Her voice was small but proud, and it carried in the cold. The cairn answered. One stone shifted. Then two. A crack opened down Torvald's mound where the living had piled panic over the dead. Frozen earth breathed through it. The flame bent toward the opening as if pulled. Kari stepped back. Njal dropped the pitchcloth. It landed in the snow, still burning, too small to save anything and bright enough to show the hand pushing through the stones. The little flame threw huge shadows. Kari saw her own arm stretch across Torvald's cairn like the arm of a giant. For one foolish heartbeat, she felt brave enough to tell Freya she had done what adults would not. Then the stones moved, and courage became a sound trapped in her throat. The path to the burial ground was marked by adult footprints, deep and wide. Kari put her boots inside Freya's prints when she could. Narlo tried to step in Ulfric's because they were larger and easier to find. The children did not know they were following the shape of the argument itself, mercy on one side, law on the other, both leading to the same grave. The little coal glowed between them, and the wind kept trying to take it. Each time it dimmed, Kari bent over it like a mother over a sick child. Kari had never lit a pyre. She had seen them from far away, had smelled smoke on feast days and death days, had watched adults stand with faces made strange by fire. She thought a pyre began with one flame and became enough because that was what fire did. Anjal knew less and feared more. He kept whispering that the cloth was too small. Kari told him, all fires started small. That sounded wise to her because adults often said true things in short lines. She did not know that some fires were too small to honor anything and large enough to wake everything. This time, the hand was closer to the children than to the path. Kari screamed. The burial ground screamed back with stone. Thank you for listening. This chapter ends here, but the story continues. Follow the series for new chapters, and when you are ready, explore the other worlds and storylines waiting beyond this one. If you enjoyed this episode, leaving a like or a comment helps more listeners find the story.